Welcome to Raising the Curve, a podcast designed to teach you everything that you need to know to be better with your money. Come and learn alongside me, Sophie Hallwright, a total beginner, from the finance expert, Victoria Harris.
So I've asked all of the questions you wish you could so that finance, investing and growing your wealth actually makes sense.
Yes, it's expert education, but that we promise will not be boring.
And in the wise words of Cher,
my mom said to me, you know, sweetheart, one day you should settle down and marry a rich man. And I said, Mom, I am a rich man.
Come and talk and learn and laugh with us, because together we really can raise the curve. Today we're talking about money,
relationships and money
and love. And how
happiness.
Yeah, finances can play such a massive part in a relationship dynamic, and for positive reasons, and unfortunately some really serious breakdowns of relationships happen over money.
And we wanted to do an episode to effectively help you guys navigate different earning amounts with your partner and with your relationship. So
we've done a bit of research around what is happening around the world in different parts to see what are some of the most interesting stats that come up when we look into money and relationship dynamics.
Well, in New Zealand, 20%, so 1 in 5 people have broken up because of financial
I honestly would have thought
issues.
that was way more.
Yeah, I would have thought that would have been higher as well, but still, that's quite a lot. Pretty similar in the UK and Australia as well. The percentage of men earning more than women is about 70% in New Zealand, and it's pretty similar in Australia and the UK as well. The percentage of people combining their finances, so in New Zealand, about 70% of people combine their finances, and that's usually around the time of moving in together, being engaged or being married. And it's quite low in the UK and Australia, actually. Fully combining your finances is about 35 to 40%,
Wow.
so quite different. So yeah, Kiwis
That is
are much
super
more
interesting. I think that's because we are a little bit colonial, you know. We're like tiny little New Zealand where everyone gets shacked up early. I think that kind of doesn't surprise me, actually. But yeah, I guess today we wanted to bring in Dani, who was on the podcast not that long ago. Dani was living in New Zealand and has now relocated over here, which we love. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
And she's our commercial director. And all three of us just speak about our experiences being in relationship with people where there was a disparity in earning and the way that we approached finances. And just, yeah, I think this is a conversation we'll come back to quite a few times, but hopefully one you enjoy. And yeah, any feedback, as always, please let us know. Dani.
welcome.
Welcome back. I don't think we've had a guest person in studio in this close succession, have we?
No.
Well, we were just talking about this. We had a
Apart from you and
strategy
me.
day a few weeks ago, and we started talking about the disparity between partners when you're in relationships and how it can affect the dynamics. And anyway, we were like, this is definitely a podcast conversation. So thanks for coming on
You're
again.
welcome. Thanks for having me back, guys.
What was the feedback like after the last time?
I got lots and lots and lots of personal messages.
Really?
Yeah, I had quite a lot of people add me or send me messages on Instagram.
That's nice.
Some asked for my email address so that they could speak to me and tell me about their story, which was really
Really?
sweet. Yeah.
Wow.
I had quite a lot of people ask me for the spreadsheet that I use for budgeting, but overall people were just really receptive, I think, to the fact that it's not always like this pleasant journey to get somewhere, and talking about that is quite refreshing, I think, for some people. I think it is interesting the amount of people that came back to me versus the people who I perhaps thought would comment and then didn't, and I can see that would have made them uncomfortable because of the amount of vulnerability in that chat. But I
Also,
think,
people don't really know what to comment. Like,
yeah, what do you say to that?
congratulations, or like.
I just think that's
Well
really
done,
brave.
you.
Good on
Yeah.
you for speaking about your...
But I feel like some people don't know what to say, so it's better to not say anything at all, which is not better. But
Actually, for anyone that hasn't listened to that episode, it's Raising the Curve 129. The Curve's new chapter welcoming Danielle Kroom. So if you haven't listened, go back. But the reason we wanted to get you in today is one of the conversations that we were having between the three of us is the idea of earning different amounts to a partner and how that reflects on dynamics, on how you approach finances together. And all of us have had really different experiences with that, with different partners. And so we wanted to open the conversation up. And Vic, I know you've done a bit of research around this. Is there anything that you wanted to preface or kind of set the scene? Because we've also put this out on socials just to get some feedback from our community on how they split finances with their partners.
Yeah, so we asked a few questions to the community. And the first one, how do you and your partner split the bills? And the overwhelming majority was 50-50, which was quite interesting.
That really is cool, though. I actually think, wait, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking that overall, like, the majority of women earn less than men, and yet you're splitting the expenses 50-50.
Interesting.
So we're getting disproportionately impacted. And I'm making a general assumption here.
That's so interesting. I was thinking, cool, everyone's on the bandwagon of standing on their own two financial feet. But yeah, and what other stuff came in?
Do you think, well, this is, I guess, a good flow-on question to that previous one, do you think splitting bills based on income is fair? Majority of people said depends on how big the difference is. Then about 30% said, yep, it's only fair.
It's so interesting because if I'm being completely honest, I think that there's an element of me that if it was the other way round, I would say, yeah, they should be paying more.
What do you mean the other way around?
Let's just say for me, I was in a dynamic with someone who was earning a huge amount more than me. I'd feel really hard done by if we weren't splitting things proportionately to income. But if I was the one that was earning more, I would find it really hard to do that. Is that fair or is that really bratty?
To split 50-50?
No, to do it proportionately. Because the thing, and the reason I say it is because it's not just based on what you're earning at that time. There's so many other things to consider in terms of assets, blah, blah, blah.
But I'm thinking, like, you're living equally. You're eating equally, like, again, making it a misunderstanding. You're eating equally, you're living equally, you're using the shower equally, you're using the lights equally. So therefore, surely those expenses should be 50-50. It should be irrelevant what you earn.
So if somebody, though, was earning $50,000 and one of them is earning $100,000 and that meant that the lower income party then had $25 of play money a week and the higher income party had $200, $250 of play money a week, probably significantly more than that. Do you think that's fair?
I think there's situations where if the higher income earning person was like, let's go to a fancy dinner, then of course they would pay. Or if they were like, let's live in a fancy house with a huge mortgage, then yes, I think those things are conversations. But I think like groceries, I don't know.
Can we pause before you go into this? Because I think we need to give some context as to why we've got Dani in to have this conversation. So Dani, you've been in a few different dynamics throughout your life. Most of which, am I right in saying, you have earned more than your partners?
Yes.
How did those conversations start? From the beginning, did you set a precedent that things were 50-50? What has your experience been?
I think it's hard to set the expectation in the beginning because it sort of takes away the romance. That's the problem, isn't it? You get into the conversations with people and you have dates and you kind of hope that it's... I like the 50-50 dating aspect. I don't expect people to take me on dates where they pay for everything, but I do like you get this one, I'll get the next one. So once you go into that sort of rhythm, when you then end up moving in together, which is when this becomes real, you could be 18 months in, you could be 12 months in, and you've already created a dynamic that you then need to
reassess or restructure.
Yeah. So all of a sudden you kind of peel back this layer of romance and say, okay, let's step out of the black and white movie. What do you earn?
Yeah. It's funny you say that because the biggest, like the stats in our community around when you should combine finances is, when you move in together or have to pay a mortgage.
But am I right in saying that you combined finances with a recent partner in the very early dating phase?
Yes.
But did you combine or did you just set up
We set up a
joint
joint account and put money in. So we didn't have to have that dynamic when we were out for dinner of like, you get this, I'll get this. You know, it was just like, we'll just pay on the joint card. It kind of removed all of that.
How was that conversation when you first had it? Who brought that up?
I think I did. I think there'd been a few other money conversations before that and it just kind of made sense.
So how much were you putting in? What was it? Was it purely for fun stuff?
Purely for fun stuff. Like,
coffees
there
or
wasn't
breakfast?
any rhyme or reason to the amount. It was literally, I think it was like $200 a month.
That's interesting because when I was going through I didn't really prep for this conversation, which I'm sure we'll feel throughout the episode. But when I was going through my old Monzo, because when I came back to the UK, I just used the old account that was still active. And one of the most recent things that had been on there was somebody asking me to split a coffee payment. And it was somebody I was in a relationship with.
No.
Coffee payment. No.
So but Vic just said she set up an account for money so that when they went out for coffees, they could
Just
theoretically
do it,
be
yeah.
splitting it.
Yeah.
So-
it removes that uncomfortable.
But he was
can
doing
you
the same
transfer
thing.
Me?
He was then, you can request it on Monzo. You can request payment. And we had obviously gone out for coffees. This is years and years and years ago. We'd gone out for coffees and he'd requested half of the payment.
Oh,
I just can't.
It's so interesting though, because I think, and this is something that I've had a conversation with a recent partner about, is the idea of, I know that money conversations should not be romanticized. I am really on board with the idea that not everything in a relationship needs to be romantic. In fact, it's really important to have practical conversations, and you are kind of in a business relationship with that person as much as you are romantically, because you're building a life together. Ideally, you have joint goals that you're working towards. You have a certain lifestyle that you both want to keep up with, blah, blah, blah. But for me, I cannot help but find it uncomfortable asking or arguing or talking about dollars and cents. I think it's very different if it's £100, $150 dinner, so different. But I really like saying, oh, I'll get this, or for them saying, I'll get this. But I also understand that those things really add up. And I don't know, I'm really in two minds about the best way to approach it.
But you can do that, I'll get this, in certain occasions, even by having a joint account, because you can be like, well, I'll get this on my card if you wanted to shout them dinner.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just like every time you go up, say you go out for croissants and a coffee and it's like, oh, should you get this or should I get that? You know, you can just put it on the joint card. I think
there should be an expectation. My preference is that the expectation is it's always split, but that person then has the ability to say, actually, no, I've got this.
Yes.
Because then there's no pressure that either party is expected to pay for it, but people then can be, you know,
Generous when they want
they can
to.
have that romantic moment. They go, you know what, don't worry about it. I'm just going to get this. It's not a big deal. And if it's not a big deal to that person, we have to let it not be a big deal to them and not then take that on. As you were saying, Sophie, you kind of get icky with it, but perhaps only if somebody's paying for you, not if you're the one shouting dinner.
Well, I think what happened for me was we've been using Monzo, which is where you split account. You know, you split a bill, send it to them. And because I generally will do that in a big sweep and I'll send 10 in one go, the idea of shouting something gets really lost in that because you're just going, accept, accept, accept. So if someone says, oh, this is on me or I'm shouting it, I think having a joint account in a way makes that a lot more clear when something has been paid for as a nice gesture opposed to just another expense. Because, for example, when I was in Italy recently, we were on the beach. I decided to go get a pizza and some beers, came back and I was like, just so you know, like I wanted this. Don't stress about this. This is something like I just wanted to get it. But amongst the sea of Monzo splits, that gets sort of forgotten about or kind of assumed that it was part of. I find it really hard to differentiate without a joint account.
And I think that's kind of the difference here. You're doing it after the fact. Whereas like if you do it before and just put the money into the joint account, then you're not being reminded. It's a less admin. You
No,
know?
100%.
Yeah, it's like, let's just put in X amount a month and then the default is to spend on the joint account and we don't have to send bills to each other. It's like,
I
Because
agree
also
with
you
that.
forget.
yeah.
I agree with it, but I wouldn't put it into the dating phase. I think
Oh,
that
I
only
see, yeah.
comes in
When you move
when
in.
you are, sharing the larger expenses.
Yeah.
Because that makes complete sense.
It's so interesting though, because why? What difference does it make? Because at what point are you not dating and
No, but you're sharing a life then. Whereas you are, not to say that you stop becoming individual people, but things you do become far more intertwined when you're in the same living quarters as someone. Living quarters?
But
Fully
do you
British.
not think that you're
the living quarters.
do you
in a
not
period
think
drama.
do you not think though that is similar? If you've dated someone for 6 months and you don't live together and you spend most of your weekend together and nights during the week buying groceries, what's the difference?
I think it's just the time when it happens.
Right.
So,
I think
and everyone has to judge that based on their own relationship. There's no yes or no, like right or wrong answer here. It's like when you're ready to have that chat. But for me, anything before maybe a year, I would probably say is too soon in the relationship to be a joint account. I think my last relationship, I think we got the joint account, maybe 13, 14 months in, very specific. And that's because we were going on holiday together. So it made sense to then start putting that money into our joint savings account so that we could then buy the trip together. But before that, it was dates and movie tickets and such, and it sort of felt more romantic, I think, to just have each other shout that stuff. Obviously, the problem comes when it wasn't really 50-50. It was
Okay, so that's what I want to get into. And
80-20.
did you have any more stats that you'd like to share on that?
Oh, no, I was just saying, I mean, maybe I should have waited longer to do the joint account because now we're not together and I've got, but I've got an extra, I think there's like an extra £20 in there left over. I'm like, woohoo, it's in my name, woohoo.
But see, imagine if that happened if it was 2,000 and it's in your name.
I would transfer half back.
But 20, it's all yours.
20, I'm like, man. Yeah.
That can go to my next
But I don't
coffee.
think there is also ever a point that is, like you were saying, that is right for everyone. It's like when it is organic, that's when it should be right for you. It's like if you are having conversations about money early on and you find it easy to set up a joint account or split bills early on, then that's okay. If it's like if you want to wait until you move in together or you have children and you have big expenses, then do it then. It's not like anyone's judging you from when you are or
Well,
not.
people are, but they shouldn't be.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Because they should be more focused on their own relationships. But I think that speaks to the partner you're picking, though. You know, if you are picking someone that reflects what you want in life, the conversation will probably be easier.
Yeah.
Because you'll be looking towards the same goals and have the same thought process where possible, within reason. If you are choosing someone that is the complete end of the spectrum to you, maybe that's an opposites attract thing. My experience is that opposites attract for a period of time and then they stop attracting. So I think there's an element of picking someone, that has the same money mindset as you, which is helpful.
In your experience, just before when you said this can work if it's 50-50, knowing that you've dated people that have earned less than you, and this is not to any specific relationship, just your general experience, because you've been in some pretty impressive roles. I think that you definitely would be considered a higher earner, just as a general, not even gendered. How have you found dating with the split? Has it been a situation where you've wanted to go on more elaborate dates that they can't keep up with, or you pay for things that are more expensive? And because I just wonder, because it's probably quite similar sometimes for some of your relationships too, Vic, where you also really like nice things. Maybe they want to go to Nando's instead of some nice, how have you both experienced that?
Well, firstly, for anyone listening, Nando's still has a firm place in my heart as a UK national.
There'll be a lot of people that eat at Nando's and be like, so if it's actually really nice.
I can't even believe it's a restaurant. I thought it was like McDonald's.
It's not a restaurant in the UK. It's a way of life in the UK.
It's actually quite healthy. Like it's like chicken and salad.
Okay, let's not
let's not do that. So to the point of liking kind of more expensive restaurants and more extravagant dates, I haven't really ever wanted that, which is, I guess anyone that listened to the previous episode will sort of understand that a bit more, but it's just because I have not wanted to have really bougie, extravagant things for a long time. It might have been on my radar one day, but I'm quite a pizza, beer, play a game of pool kind of girl. So that hasn't been much of a problem because that's quite an accessible date, and I'll usually be the one that's planning because I'm a massive type A. And I will end up taking control of that situation. So I don't give men, as a rule, a massive chance to take me out on dates, if we're being honest, at the beginning. But then I do sort of, over time, expect them to come to the party. And my experience is that once they've seen I'll pay for things at the beginning, they don't.
They don't what, sorry?
They don't pay for things.
So have you experienced where you've dated people and you have a more weighted towards you paying for things?
I've had relationships where in the entire relationship, I've been taken on, i.e. they've paid for 3 to 4 dates in a number of years, whereas I would have then paid for everything else in terms of, we'll call it extracurricular, so outside of bills and outside of rent, anything else like holidays and spending money and coffees and breakfasts and stuff was all kind of carried by me.
Oh God, I'd be so bitter.
Did you ever approach that conversation?
Yes.
And what was it met with?
Always acceptance.
Yeah.
And never there was never any bitterness and there's never any sort of anger or awkwardness. And that person or people would then say, okay, great, I'll try more. But then nothing really happens.
But when you say try more, was it not? It was not expected, maybe because they couldn't afford to pay more money, but potentially in other areas step up. Is that kind of what you mean? Or
No, I'm always aware of what my partners earn. It's a question I ask pretty early on in the piece, maybe by date 5 or 6.
what do you say?
I think it generally comes up because I make it come up. But I will talk about goals and holidays I want to go on, and then I'll ask them about their career plans and sort of say, well, where are you at now? And then I'll usually talk about what I'm saving or what I'm investing, because we always get into investing conversations. But the way I've asked the last 2 people I was in a relationship with was after a certain amount of time, I would say, oh, it would be great to do this, or we could book this trip, but also let me know if that's not in your scope or in your budget.
That's a good way to do it.
Because I'm not across what you earn, and I give them multiple opportunities to let me know what they earn.
That's a really subtle, nice way. You can tell if someone's uncomfortable answering.
Yeah, and when you're in a relationship or any kind of friendship or really anything, you don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable about the disparity of pay, because it doesn't need to be a thing, particularly when, let's just go for a beer and a pizza then. It's not a big deal. We don't need that 5-star restaurant. I don't find that an essential. It's not something that's on my radar. But usually I find that if you do that a couple of times and you say to someone, did you want to go to the movies tonight, or are you saving money? And you kind of keep giving them the opportunity and the space to say, actually, I can't afford that. Or you disarm the situation and you just say, this is a super safe space in this conversation. There's no judgment here, and make sure that they understand that, because they've got options of this really easy night in, we'll make something for $10, or we can go out and we can have a night out. Just let me know how you're feeling or where you're at financially. And then I think if you put that into conversation as dating kind of goes on, eventually people will just come to the party and say what they earn. And then you can go, great, now we can plan that. And I mean, recently I had this conversation with someone and said, well, we're going on this trip, so is this something that's within budget for you? And then that was the moment they said, yeah, I earn this much a month, so this is completely fine for me. I said, great. And now I know that, so I can factor that into thoughts where I'm going, is that going to be out of their reach? Is that going to be out of their goals? Because if somebody's got savings goals or they want to buy a house in the next 2 years, yeah, they might earn $85,000 a year, £50,000 a year, but that doesn't mean that they want to spend that money on a dinner. They might have goals that we need to be respectful of.
But then in other relationships, if you don't have super high expectations of very expensive, elaborate dates, how has it played out before you said you've been in some relationships where they might have gone on or paid for 2 or 3 or 4 dates within a couple of year period?
Yeah.
Is that even cheaper dates? Is that beer and pizza, or is that, because what I'm trying to understand is how you got to a point where you say 50-50 is preferable until you're in a living situation or something, more serious. How, with other dynamics, has it got to the point where for most extracurricular things above expenses, you're expected to pay?
I think I've accepted behavior that has created tendencies and patterns in relationships, to be honest. I always want to contribute and I want to give. And I think that's been taken advantage of quite a lot. So there would have been times where that's been brought up in past relationships, but oftentimes it sort of hurts. You kind of just go, oh, if they wanted to, they would. So then you just wait for this moment to happen, and then you don't realize that 3 years has passed.
And they haven't.
They haven't contributed to the savings. They haven't contributed to any investments. They haven't taken you out for dinner. And then you sort of
get a bit sour or like a bit
it builds
frustrated.
resentment, doesn't it? And that's why speaking so openly about money can still be done, I think, in a relationship format that doesn't kill the romance, because not speaking about money really will kill the romance.
It's so true.
Did you feel like every time you paid for something there was like a little bit of a like, oh, or no, like every time you paid for coffee, every time you paid for lunch, every time?
For me?
Yeah. Was it
towards the end? Yeah.
Yeah.
You start to go,
I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing is like with money, it's like we use it so many times throughout the day or the week or the month. It is this constant reminder of the misalignment. And it's not just like one big thing of like buying a house or going on a holiday. It's like every single day. It's like,
I think if you are going to be in a relationship with someone who has a completely different income bracket to you though, and maybe that's because they're doing part-time work, maybe because they're caring for a family member, whatever it might be, it's important to remember unpaid work.
Yes.
Which is the household contributions and the cleaning and life admin. You know, I really do think that stacks up. And in jobs that I've had before where I haven't been able to really focus on anything other than that role in order to even be in that income bracket, there's a payoff. And
I couldn't think of anything that I would appreciate more, or I couldn't even put a dollar cost on it. If I came home, if I was the breadwinner or the highest income earner, and I was coming home and my partner was organizing cooking, finding really healthy ingredients for me to be able to fuel my body and my mind, to take that admin off of my plate so that I'm still looking after myself from a health perspective. I could not put a dollar value on how much I would appreciate that.
And I think it's also worth saying, like, we're not saying that you have to go into a relationship earning the same as your partner. Like, I think it's more what we're saying is like just having those conversations and realizing that everyone's going to be, you're not going to find a partner that's earning exactly the same as you with exactly the same spending habits and exactly the same goals. It's like, but that's what you talk through and get through and find something that works for both of you.
But that's a values system.
Yes. Yeah.
Finding a partner that resonates with your values, I think, is what you're getting at there. And that's really important because it means that those conversations can happen because there's trust on the table and you both see things in similar ways.
And I think it's really sad in our audience that over 50% of people have had disagreements or tension in their relationship over money.
Does not surprise
Not
me
at
at
all.
all.
I think that's actually quite
it's
low.
Same.
But I think it's sad that it creates tension. Like, it should be exciting. It's like, cool, what are we saving for? What are we going to strive for? What's a money goal? What are we, like, it should be, I'd love to see that reversed in terms of like making money less bad.
Using it as a resource, as a source
to
of
achieve
excitement.
things, to make your life better and more exciting and like achieving those goals, then
What's your experience been, Vic, dating people who earn different... Oh, she's rubbing her hands together. What are you about
Here's
to say?
me scared about it and Vic's like, let me at it.
I have been fortunate to date people that, have been in both camps. So men that have earned more than me and men that haven't. I think I come from a place though of, and we were talking about this the other day about like being generous just in general. And I think with friends and partners, that's exactly the same. So when I was dating someone that earned less than me, we split things 50-50. But I knew that if I wanted to go out to a fancy restaurant 5 nights a week, then I'm going to have to pay for that because that's what I like, and therefore
It's out of their budget and it's not what they prioritize.
But it wasn't like
on.
It's also a reflection on me. I'm like, Vic, you don't have to go to this nice restaurant. It's like when we were on holiday, we don't have to get the Audi rental car.
Oh my God, did you hear about that?
No, but
We were on,
It's like-
we were on holiday together and Vic had way more expendable income than I did. And we went to go get a car rental and there was honestly not even a flicker of a thought that we would not just go for the most cheap car. And I saw Vic looking at the cars and like, she was like, there's a convertible Audi and it was like 4 times the price. And I was like, you're absolutely taking the piss.
Sophie,
like,
you and I should go on a holiday together. We'd have a great
absolutely joking. But in hindsight, we had never had those conversations. And so in hindsight, you should pay the difference if you wanted to get the Audi.
I agree with that.
And I
because
would've,
you've got the top shelf choice here. Soph's fine with the bottom shelf, which I'm on the bottom shelf with you. I would never, ever upgrade my car.
But for me,
on
that was
holiday.
a moment of like, don't be fucking ridiculous. Like, this car has 4 wheels and a steering wheel, like.
I mean, I wouldn't have said no if you'd paid the difference. I would have been quite happy about it. But the point is, I think when it comes to anything outside of your immediate expenses, so mortgage, rent, food, electricity, all of the stuff that you need to pay for, if you're wanting to spend more than what your partner can keep up with or whoever's earning less, I think there should be an expectation that you step up, or you go do that without the expectation that they need to come with you, because it's so unfair and stressful to be the one that's earning less and trying to keep up with something you can't afford. And it actually goes against everything that we try and talk about, like spend within your means, spend money on what means something to you. And if your partner doesn't give a shit about going out for dinner, but you do,
then you
and
should
you want
pay.
them to come, then that's, I think, something that needs to be talked about.
And I've definitely had friends like that have gone on holidays and their version of a holiday that they want versus the version of the holiday that probably their partner can afford are very different, so they pay. And like, I totally get that. And I think with this one relationship was that the thing that concerned me the most...
Is this someone earning less or more?
Sorry, this was someone earning less. The thing that concerned me the most was the lack of assets and investments at their age. And I think for me, it didn't matter what they earned. That was a reflection of their spending habits versus their income. And that was way more...
Did they have any assets?
Not that I know. So,
Yeah.
and I think for me, that was like, okay, you're spending what you're earning. So how would we as a couple ever achieve financial goals or get ahead? Whereas if that was the case, but they had assets or they weren't spending because they wanted to save for other things, or, I think that was for me the bigger red flag.
Just for clarity, define assets.
Investments, property, car.
I think it's one thing to say that. For me, the biggest flag would be debt. So I don't necessarily...
I think we didn't get that far in the relationship to talk about debt, but like the asset thing is probably something you can, it's more obvious, it's more seen, and the fact that there wasn't any of that was kind of, But I think if we got to the relationship and got a bit more down that track to have those conversations, then maybe we might have unearthed.
The only thing that I would say though is coming from a place where I didn't get a lot of education around money or awareness around the better way to do things or even a different way to do things, I think in a relationship there's a real opportunity to share experiences and learnings and wisdom because everyone has their strong point, and you would hope that in a relationship you're teaching someone something and they're teaching you something about something completely different. And if someone isn't open to doing things differently, that for me is a way bigger red flag than looking at where they're at in their life, maybe having no assets, spending all their money week to week, month to month. If a conversation was had and they're not open to learning or changing that for me would be scary.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of people, I don't think it's gendered, I think a lot of guys also have no context as to the best way to spend their money or to how to get assets, etc.
And I think that's, I should have kind of prefaced that. I think it also depends on the person and how emasculated they might feel by dating someone, because there was undertones I heard after the relationship ended to friends that he felt very emasculated with the amount I earn and what I shouted him what I spent money on. And for me, that was coming from a really nice place. And so I think that was kind of, I was like, okay, this is not.
Wow, that's such
so it was just like a bit
sign.
of.
See, I've never experienced that. I've never experienced the reaction other than just that sort of joy and happiness from the partner that I was earning what I was earning. I never felt that resentment, and I never felt that threatened sort of behavior from any of my partners.
I think there's a lot of ego wrapped up in, and also I think it's really interesting. I went to a talk not that long ago about toxic masculinity and how can men show up in this environment where they don't know to open the door, they don't know to pay, they don't. We're really rewriting what it looks like at the moment, and we're in the thick of it right now. And I think, as you said, Dani, there's some men that really all they want is for their partner to succeed. They're genuinely stoked for them. There's no element of jealousy or resentment. And then there's others where maybe their ego's a little bit more fragile and they equate money with value or success and things, and it all comes down to the way that someone perceives themselves, really, to how they respond to someone else earning more or less than them. I've never been in a dynamic where I've earned more than my partner until very, very recently, and that's because he hasn't been working.
So if you... and this is a question to both of you because I know my answer here, but if you were in a relationship with somebody that earned significantly less than you and didn't have any assets, would you get a prenup if you got engaged before you got married?
I know where you're going with this. I would get a prenup before getting married regardless, I think. I
hope you would. I don't want your ex-husband to own your Curve shares, and I would be at the registry making sure you fucking sign that thing. He signed that thing.
I think it's more for me. I think it puts the responsibility and I've got myself into action, because I think it's really easy, and I notice myself doing it all the time, where I revert into thinking or freaking out about how am I going to afford this or how am I going to, and But if I'm being totally honest, Dani, this is still something I'm navigating because I still have intertwined romance and money a lot, and untangling that for me has been difficult because on one side, getting married really or being de facto or joining finances should propel your wealth. It should be, that's the whole reason that marriage existed in the first place, is for resources. So yeah, honestly, I really flip-flop between the two.
I definitely would get a prenup. I did not get a prenup with my first marriage.
Whoa, married? Have we said that before?
Yeah, I think in the last episode I said.
Okay.
But then you said another episode.
Oh, yes.
As you guys know, I was married as well. We just like to fit lots of things into short spaces.
I'm like, another episode. So you didn't have a prenup?
We didn't have a prenup. We were also 24 and
Didn't have a lot of assets or...
no one's hugely shocked that relationship ended. Who gets married at 24?
oh my God, fun. You would have been like, brother or Dani just being like getting married. No?
No.
Okay.
What part of my personality have you seen that I'm unaware of?
I'm just like, oh my
relaxed, frivolous.
God. I'm like
Dani.
24-year-old Dani. Just
Really not one person in
Just
this
like,
room
not
is
at
light
all.
and frivolous.
Oh, just like in love and getting married and
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, okay.
But financially, we were very equal actually in that because we were in your early 20s. Usually people are in the same boat, and it's in the mid to late 20s that you start to really see the growth and trajectory of careers take off. So I can't speak to what that person is earning now, but at the time it was pretty 50-50.
So why do you regret not getting a prenup?
So when the relationship, nothing happened. We all walked away very clean. We earned a similar amount, but towards the end of the relationship, the separation period of that relationship was like 18 months. It was such a long time. By then he's in a new relationship. I was in a new relationship, but we were legally still married. During that time, I built a house in Melbourne, and I did not tell him about that. And at the time of divorce, had he requested assets, he would have had half of that.
Oh, God. Because legally you're still married.
Could he come back on it now?
Even if on paper you were very clearly not together?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, I never realised that was a thing.
Because it was money, the deposit money I saved throughout the course of our relationship. So
I really feel like Dani's one of those people that she's such an onion. You know, you're like, oh, this Leia, she lived in Melbourne and had a
built
house.
in Melbourne.
Oh, this
Me,
Leia,
I'm
she
picturing
lived-
you like
Yes,
with a
same.
hammer and a
I'm
nail.
like, did you
being-
physically build
Sorry.
it?
No. The company I worked for, because it was a home builder, and there was a sort of an incentive scheme that you could get in with a slightly lower deposit than the average person would need.
I'm just waiting for and I've got 5 children.
Same. I honestly, if she said I've got a pet guava or something, I'd be like,
You guys knew I had a house in Australia.
what is it? Is a guava a fruit?
It's a guava. Do you mean iguana?
A guava. I was like, that would be weird. It's like a pet mango.
Oh my God. Anyway, the point is something weird, a weird pet.
Yeah.
No, so anyway, yes, I had that property, and obviously now I still own 100% of that. But had I gotten that prenup, that was one of the instances where it actually would have gone against me. It's been a long enough time now. Statute of limitations has passed, so we're all good.
What if you were dating someone or getting married to someone that had significantly more than you? Would you get a prenup?
Yeah. If they wanted to, yeah.
If they
you
wanted
can't
to.
You can't
Just
do
be
it
like,
one way and then
I
not the
know.
other.
It's like,
Mostly because
I'm just trying to pin you down. You're like,
sorry, I'm so busy. I don't have a pen.
I think that
I don't have a pin.
anything you earn before or anything you've gained before remains yours. Anything you build together, you split down the middle at the end.
Yeah.
But also, I do think you should revise those prenups or have clauses in them for children.
Yes,
You know, it's
definitely.
completely different if you enter into motherhood during that relationship and your income drops and then you're not able to actually contribute to the investments or the savings or the house in the same way. You're still doing that unpaid work. And at the end of that relationship, should it end, then you should be entitled to half, but there should be clauses built in to make sure that mums don't end up worse off.
I think my biggest issue in my relationship will be my spending habits. I think that's where we'll have misalignment in terms of like I could earn more, they could earn more, whatever, but I think my spending habits will be.
What do you think you'd be picked up on?
Well, I
All
just
the
think
packages
every relationship
arriving?
I've been in, they've just been like so like nonchalant with like spending money on nice things. And I'm the one that's like, oh no, but I want the nice couch or I want the nice, you know, like, and I think that would be what.
But don't you think if you're paying for it, you can spend whatever the fuck you want?
no, but I'm saying when you like combine finances, and you're trying, you know, it'll be like, no, Vic, we don't need the Audi convertible. We can have the
So you think you'll be pulled up because you want the Audi and they tell you no.
And
They
then
get
for
the
me,
Honda
I think,
Jazz.
the Honda Jazz. And I think for me, in that moment when we were in Greece, it was like, I'm like, pull your head in. Of course you don't need the Audi convertible.
No, it was just like not an option.
No, I know. But for me, I was like, don't be ridiculous. Of course we can have the other car. So I think for me, if I go into another relationship, that will be the biggest thing I'll have to learn.
But will it? Why should you have to change how you like spending money?
Well, because it'll help me achieve my goals faster, my financial goals.
See, I think that's really interesting because I think you've done a lot of work on your spending habits, on your goals. You've got all your stuff set up. So I just think you should be able to guilt-free buy nice things that you want, knowing that it's not impacting your long-term goals.
But if it impacts my relationship, you know, it's not
Have you
even-
had that happen before?
No, but I could just see it. I feel like it would be something that would happen.
Well, I feel like you have had it happen before, though, because if somebody is saying
Oh, yes.
past
Yeah, yeah.
relationship that they felt emasculated by the way that you spend.
Yeah, what were you spending? Do you remember what you bought?
No, I just remember like we went out for their version of dinner spots and mine.
Oh, no.
Were very different.
Yes, okay, I know exactly what's happening
And then
here.
it was like there was a weekend away that I just wanted to go and try this new hotel. And so I paid for it. And then there was like comments around that. And I was like, oh, here I was just doing a nice weekend away. But yeah.
Oh, do you want to date me? I'm like, you can shout me a nice hotel.
But I don't know what to do with it because recently I've had a lot of that affection paid to me and somebody wants to send me flowers and they want to take me on dates and they want to buy things for me.
I've never seen someone more embarrassed getting offers flowers.
I've never seen someone get more off a
Same,
flowers.
actually, that too. Yeah, that's fair.
It's such a foreign concept to me that it made me really uncomfortable and I ended up picking a massive fight about it.
Did you?
And I think that's a conversation.
Because I
and
don't
it's- yeah.
know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
I've always been the person that's used to either paying or being resentful that I'm paying. And now that person wants to pay for me and I go, but you're not earning enough.
Is it because you know that they don't have assets and therefore you're kind of spending irresponsibly?
Perhaps, but that's also not my responsibility or job or
That's
place.
kind of what I mean.
to tell that person what they want to do with their money and why, because we're in the dating stage of the relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
If we were
I
in,
see.
if we were living together and we were sharing bills, yeah, I'd have a problem with it because I'd say, well, that's fine, but you know, we could have put that money into savings or this investment, but we're not there. So I've got to learn to enjoy that.
But you're going on holidays together. So does that
I don't
mean,
know what you're talking about. That's not happening.
how do you discuss?
We have discussed that. So that person is going on holiday and I happen to be going at the same time. And
To the same place, to the same hotel, to the same
It's
room?
so weird. It just happened.
so no issues with commitment whatsoever. But they wanted to pay for everything
Yeah.
and pushed very hard for that. I've never experienced that in my entire
Oh my
life.
God, neither.
And I
I'd
could
be like, fuck
Have
yeah.
you?
I could not have been more uncomfortable with
Yeah.
it. And I had friends say, sorry, you've literally gone on for years about somebody doing this for you. You're getting everything you want and you are cracking the shits.
Well, this is what I was about to say to you because you say, oh, don't carry my bags. I'll do my own stuff. But then when it comes to money, someone can pay and you're like, go for it. Like, I don't understand.
I'm the other way around. Carry the bags, take the bins out, cook the
Same.
dinner, but we're splitting everything financially 50-50.
Yeah.
Would you not feel at all weird if someone's taking you on holiday and paying for everything? Honest answer. If you wouldn't,
I feel like I would be thankful. It depends. Like if it's a holiday I can't afford, then yeah, go for it. But I would overcompensate and be like, okay, well, I want to take you out for dinner most nights. You know, like I would try and pay in another way. I was like, PG podcast.
I can't wait to
for anyone that didn't see, I just gave Vic a wick.
We've ended.
I'd brainstorm. Is there any other way that I can make up for this beautiful accommodation?
Would play cards.
See, that's what I don't
We'd play
like.
Monopoly.
I don't like the idea of feeling like I need to.
You owe someone
Owe
something.
someone
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, but that's a whole separate relationship dynamic.
I know, but I guess that's my point is that you were in a dynamic where you were doing that for someone and they didn't feel like they owed you anything, which is really fascinating and quite an interesting one. You were in a situation where you were paying for everything. They felt really uncomfortable with it. There's just so many different nuances that
We're also comparing different lengths of relationships here. You know, where I'm talking about very, very long term, and I think you become desensitized to somebody just taking the reins, whereas maybe that chance never happened for you where that person could get comfortable. But I know that in this situation now, we are just the bottom line is going to be split 50-50 down the middle. There's one or two things that each other have paid for though. Like I wanted to do something specific in Portugal. That
May have included a boat.
It
may have been a day trip somewhere fun.
It may have included renting an expensive boat, which is very out of character for me and anyone who knows me.
So awful this.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like great. You've got there, you've earned it, you deserve it. Spend your money on what you want.
Yeah, but what have we learned about me? I buy the boat, but then I'll go $4.50 on a meal deal.
Oh,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like there's no consistency.
It's great.
Oh, Lord.
I actually remember with this relationship that I was previously talking about, and I went to the fancy hotel. I was like,
Oh my God, I love this
and
already.
then they were like, I'm going to organise a weekend away. I was like, amazing. And it was beautiful. It was amazing. And I was like, let me know if you want me to contribute. And he was like, yeah, okay, cool. Here's, and I was just like,
But that now we're back to the whole.
But see, that's not fair.
I know that's not fair. And I know that's mean. But like, I just was like, I was being nice, offering, but like, don't accept my offer.
No,
Victoria, absolutely not.
Definitely
you cannot
not.
do
Sorry.
that.
This is a no.
If a guy said that, that would be.
I know.
If it was reversed, that is totally not
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
But I actually remember this happening.
And I was just kind of like, oh, it just took the shine. I was like,
But that's
but I think that was coming from me being awkward, like, oh, well, let me know how much to transfer. I'll pay half, you know, but I like.
And they gave you a succinct answer.
Yeah,
You
and I was
said
like-
absolutely not.
I was expecting to be like, no, you paid for the last one, but it wasn't. And so for me, I was like, well, that's not really fair. But I don't know.
But that's also on you because
I
you chose
know.
the expensive hotel. And that comes back to the idea of
But I
not
also
doing
chose
things.
to offer to pay for the other trip as well. And then they just accepted my offer. I shouldn't have offered to pay. But then I didn't want to feel like I was just.
But
you
you
know.
need to have those conversations. Like, are you
Yeah.
booking something within your budget or is this something for both of us? Or,
Yeah.
like, I think you have to be so clear.
But then we'll get back to basics and nice to haves, right? Because what we're saying about long-term relationships is bills, rent, all of that stuff, perhaps 50-50 or based on
Yes.
income. Whereas the nice to haves, in my opinion, should be you shout this, you shout that. And this holiday is a perfect example of that because all the accommodation and the flights and such is 50-50 down the middle. But if I want to do a nice thing one day, I'm paying for that. And if they want to do a nice thing one day, they're paying for it.
I think
and that
that's-
kind of keeps the romance there, but the fairness level.
Is there too.
And that's when, you know, in long-term relationships, getting a savings account and contributing a recurring percentage per month, 20%, you know, just to build up your savings over time. And if you've got investments, making sure that you guys are either having separate investment accounts that you're contributing to, or you have a discussion, you say, we're both going to put into this investment. But if you do that, you need to have that in your prenup because at the end of that relationship, who's getting the investment?
I think that's it. It's like the nice to haves and the essentials. And I think there's a difference there for me personally. The essentials should be split 50-50. The nice to haves, I think it's like,
Yeah, that's where
Yeah.
I land.
yeah.
That's where I land on it.
No, sorry. I'm just thinking back to a situation that I had not that long ago where we'd given ourselves a pay rise and I wanted to celebrate. So we just get a drink. It was really chilled. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like, wow, Sophie, you're so generous at all. That's not the point of the story. But when we were talking about money, I was feeling a bit hesitant towards the idea of splitting things based on dollars and cents. I didn't know how to articulate the idea that I wanted to pay 50-50, but I didn't want it to be semantics over like 50 cents or $2. And I didn't know how to navigate that. And I was just trying to have a conversation. And he said something along the lines of, if we got married, we'd be getting a prenup. And I remember feeling so gutted about it and so out of control. I felt unloved. I know all these things are really ridiculous.
You can't help
if
how
it's-
you feel though.
But I
It's
can't
like-
help that that's what my immediate reaction was. And I think that there is this real undertone of money equals love. And so in that moment, because it wasn't me saying I would want to get a prenup, which would have made me feel really powerful and like I was in control of the situation, I felt alone, like I wasn't really cared for, like they wouldn't have my back, which was just all not true.
But how did you communicate that?
I'm pretty sure we had a fight about it.
Cool.
Well, I got
No,
really
it's like,
upset.
yeah.
I honestly also in the moment didn't know how to articulate why I felt kind of attacked.
Yeah.
It was a really strange situation, and I think that what's interesting for me now is if I'm looking at the idea that I do earn more, I would feel weird about the idea of scaling bills or scaling rent or not doing it 50. I don't know. I feel like I'm really contradicting myself here, but I wanted to share that because I think as much as you can sometimes want to be like, I'm a feminist and I've got myself. There is a lot of ingrained societal shit around money, being cared for, being loved.
Yeah, it goes back a lot further than this conversation, and a lot of that is probably from parents and the examples that you get shown when you're young, and what we see in movies about men paying for everything, and that's in every rom-com. The man will treat you to something if he thinks that you're worthy of it or you deserve it, and he brings home the bacon and all of that. But understanding money and emotional triggers in relationships is really important to have that conversation super early on, because you might have a trigger for something that you're not even aware of yet, and that might have triggered it. But had you guys had a conversation about money and romance before that, do you think that would have changed anything?
Well, yeah, I guess like where my brain has just gone is to same-sex couples. How does this play out for if there's two women in a relationship? Is money at all romantic? Or for two men? Like, we're talking really heavily about heterosexual dynamics, which is what has been presented in media and films and romance for generations. It's kind of interesting to think about, and I think we could all probably learn a lot from heterosexual relationships, because there wouldn't be that undertone of what is expected from two men in a relationship. I don't know how that would play out. And also two women, like what... if there's anyone listening who's in a same-sex relationship and you feel comfortable sending a voice note or getting in touch with us with how it plays out for you, I'd be really curious to hear. We'll put a link in the podcast show notes. I think it would be really valuable to get voice notes or messages or stories. So if you feel comfortable sharing and weighing in on this, that would be amazing. I've really enjoyed having another voice and another experience in the room, because I feel like...
I felt this was very balanced. It was quite nice to bounce, to understand how you have had chats with people before and how it's...
You mean Vic?
Ended up. Yeah, sorry. How Vic, I'm pointing, but...
Yeah, I'm like... Audio.
Sorry. Vic, how you have had those conversations with exes and I guess the repercussions almost of it versus the consequences of my conversations or lack of conversations. And it seems, based on my experience, that when I don't talk about it early on, it, no surprise, creates behavioral patterns that are so hard to undo later on in your relationship. Particularly if you bring children into it. I can't even imagine how challenging that would be if you've created a dynamic and the routine of that dynamic, and then you bring a baby into that.
You have to try and start the way you mean to continue, because you're right, you set a precedent for what is acceptable. And if it's not spoken about, no one even knows that it's upsetting you or you feel taken advantage of. Or
I definitely reckon my most recent relationship, when we spoke about money early on, was definitely one of the best things to do for me personally. I just think it was like... Yeah, I was just kind of like, oh gosh, why didn't I do this in the previous ones? It just like removed everything. It almost brought us closer. I just feel like it was actually a really good thing to do.
I think it's the most challenging for people who have been in relationships since their early 20s.
How do you rewind
How do you
that?
recreate that dynamic? You're completely different people, but you've evolved together, and your salaries will be different, your spending habits will be different, your life circumstances massively. What if you buy a house? How do you even sit down and have the chat about bills if you've never had that structure?
But maybe if you dated from your early 20s when you didn't have assets or much earning capacity, it was starting from a real equal playing field. And so probably it's naturally evolved in a way that suits both people. Or do you think that's really idealistic?
Well, I have a friend who's come out of a 20-year relationship.
Whoa.
And they had children, and there was, a split of the house at the end. And because she had not been working for the last sort of 3 or 4 years of that relationship, she got barely anything in that divorce and the division of asset, because she was at home with the children and quote unquote not working, which we all know is very, very much work. And then when she did return to work, it was sort of part-time so that she could continue to care for the kids in a greater capacity. And then at the end of that, because there had been no protection, but they'd been together for such a long time, she's ended up with, I think less than 20% of the total equity from that home.
But how could you as that partner feel okay about that? That's what I don't understand. I think
there's so much. There'd be so much in there, like in terms of like maybe anger, emotion. Like I don't know. There'd be,
but it's just straight up unfair. I don't think that's like a. Surely that's pretty across the board in terms of what most people would think in that situation.
I think the way that we would think is probably not what everyone else would think, and I also think fair what is fair is
Subjective.
so subjective. Yeah.
One thing I have written, which I did actually after the moment that I had that like misalignment in my relationship when he brought up the prenup and I felt really offended. I wrote a blog on this, which I'm going to link in the podcast show notes. One of the things that I wrote was a whole lot of questions, how to get on the same financial page as someone. And some of these you might look at and they're not helpful. Some of them might be really helpful. But even just stuff like asking the question, what's your earliest memory of money? Or what was money spoken about between your parents? What was that dynamic? Like you learn so much about that person and how they relate to finances and how that feeds into your dynamic. So I think, yeah, for us, we've been kind of like working our way through these questions over time, every now and again, one or two, and you can speak for hours about them and it's really fascinating.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I think if anyone else wants access to those, we'll put them in the link to the show notes. But thank you for coming on again, Dani. And I think as we mentioned earlier, if anyone has any experiences or things to share, I would love to hear from as many people as feel comfortable sharing, whether that's a DM on Instagram or sending a voice note. But again, just check the show notes for all the details as to how to do that.
Thanks, Dani.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to Raising the Curve. These conversations are designed to teach you everything you need to know to be better with your money, from saving to investing to talking with your friends about your salaries, all of that stuff.
And if you like what you heard, we would love if you could please hit subscribe wherever you're listening and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the episode.
And it only takes 1 second and it would really make our week, our month, our year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please do it. Okay. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.